A very good morning to all of you. So welcome back to today's analysis session for 9th of July 2023. So here starting with the important topics for today. So in Bengal, we see that 12 people have been killed as violence mars the Panchayat polls in Bengal. So despite the deployment of the central forces, we see that the violent incidences they were reported, at least 92 persons they have been injured, and incidents of poll malpractices, including snatching of the ballot papers, reported in several districts. And only 649 of the 822 companies the central forces sought arrive in the state. So here, apart from the basic factual things related to the local body elections, what is important is that you can understand this thing as a case study which can help you in GS4 ethics. So you need to think about what all measures will you be taking in order to ensure that elections are carried out in a free and fairer manner. Then coming women only courts for alternative dispute resolution. So Union government is set to launch an initiative under which women only courts, they will be set up at the village level as an alternative dispute resolution forum for issues like domestic violence, property rights, and to counter the patriarchal system. So that is basically trying to get to the point and basically thinking about alternatives which are more effective. So since they are going to be women only courts, so obviously it's very clear they'll be delving with the women only issues and that have been mentioned here. But do you think are they going to be really effective? Are they going to show up the results that are desirable? Because then another argument that we can counter it is uh, that it would lead to further increasing the case burden, and we already have the courts. So why there's a need to form a separate women only courts? So that can be there, and the scheme it will be launched on pilot basis in 50 villages each in Assam, Jammu and Kashmir in the August, and then it will be further extended to rest of the country. So it would be called as Nari Adalat, that is women's court. Of each village will have 7 to 9 members, half of which it would be elected members of the Gram Panchayat, while the other half will include teachers, doctors, and social workers. So since it would be having elected members, so do you think that it wouldn't lead to, political interference in the whole process, and will they be able to maintain the due process or law or not? So it will leverage their potential as advisors and leaders within their communities, functioning as a pressure group. So since they're going to be at the local level, so they might prove effective as well, but we'll have to wait and watch for that. So court will not only address individual cases of women and girls within the local community, who require assistance or who have grievances, but it will also raise awareness of government schemes and legal rights and entitlements of women. So the Nari Adalat will, however, it will not hold any legal status. So then again, whatever would be the decision, its applicability, it wouldn't be binding or not because it will not be having any legal status. So again, that is a question mark, and some we can say an ambiguous area. So highest rainfall in a day in the 20 years drowns Delhi in deluge. So since we have been hearing about the forecast related to it, the possibility of having an El Nino event this year, but we are seeing that normal monsoon-like conditions And yesterday only we saw that the deficiency, it has reduced down to only 5%. Then here you can see in this advertisement, so you need to know about Lok Adalats, about the effectiveness of their decisions. Are they really binding or not? And can you further appeal against the decision which was given out by a Lok Adalat or not? So these are some of the nuances. So archaeologists come up with rare findings in Tamil Nadu. A gold stud, a bone point, and carnelian bead. They have been unearthed by archaeologists in Tamil Nadu, where the State Archaeology Department, they have taken up excavation this year. So they have found Sangam Age Fort. It is believed to have existed at this particular site, and hence this in this picture you can see from left. So this is the carnelian bead, and the obverse and the reverse sides of the gold stud, and this is the bone point found by the archaeologists. So then like the distinctive features of each one of them has been explained over here. And apart from this, their importance, like it is being said that they might be belonging to Sangam age. So obviously Sangam age, it's a very important part of South Indian history. The sounding safety, a radio wireless system to rescue during disasters in Kerala. So let's understand about this technology system. It has been used to effectively coordinate relief work during floods and other calamities. So basically it increases the coordination and makes it much more smoother. That's one of the advantages. And apart from this, so it is basically the District Emergency Operations Center, which is functioning from Thrissur Collectorate. So here one incident that has been mentioned, how things were coordinated. So it functions from this particular center itself, and it connects 7 taluks, vulnerable coastal villages, and the hilly areas with the collectorate. So there's easy connectivity, and apart from this, it emerged as a force multiplier and a fallback for the disaster management force when power outages and remoteness render other communication systems defunct. So it came in handy during such times. So yesterday we talked about this topic about whether banning of internet services is the right option or not. So here the Manipur High Court tells the state to lift the ban on internet services with safeguards. So there are some reasonable restrictions under which you can ban the internet service in particular area, but again that cannot be done so often or for every small reason. It has to be a substantial thing. So the precautions agreed to by an expert panel include limiting the speed to 10 Mbps, securing undertakings from the intended users that they will not do anything illegal, and subjecting users to physical monitoring by authority or the officials concerned. So even in a GS4 ethics, whenever your suggestions are asked, and there's a case study which relates to the same thing, that internet services has been banned and there has been demand, or people are protesting against this and they want restoration of the internet services back. So what steps would you take in order to ensure that things they remain under control? So here you can see that 3 things have been mentioned, so you can understand them with more clarity. So Ayushman Bharat Health Centers, no doubt a very important scheme. So center it is adding more services to these health centers. So like screening, prevention, control, and management of the non-communicable diseases. Since their number is on a rise, so definitely this becomes an important area. Then treatment for the common ophthalmic and ENT problems, basic oral health care, elderly and palliative healthcare services, they will also be added by the August end. So Ayushman Bharat Health and Wellness Center programs, which has grown to more than 1.6 lakh centers and registered over 178 crore beneficiaries in the 5 years. Since its inception, it is undergoing its biggest expansion of services. Coming to the world page, so here in Seoul, International Atomic Energy Agency's chief, it meets the South Korean foreign minister amid the protest. So there was a meeting between them. So you can find out about the basic details about this agency. Then Pakistan is going to work with Switzerland on managing the natural disasters. So Pakistan's Prime Minister said his country looked to cooperate with Switzerland on managing the effects of climate change and receiving an advanced weather warning system from the country. So two nations, they announced they will pool the resources to help strengthen Pakistan's response to the natural disasters. So US and China, they should work together on climate change, but we know about the differences and in the form of like the cooperation, the trade front also, we call that they are going through a trade war. And cooperation on climate finance, it is a critical responsibility of both the countries, according to Janet Yellen, who's on a visit to China right now. So she urged closer communication between the two countries to improve economic decision making and challenged China to join the global initiatives to help the poorer nations address climate change and its impacts. So coming to the science page, let's see what important things do we have. So evidence for high annual rainfall 66 million years ago been found. So scientists from IIT Kharagpur and Academia Sinica from Tepi, they have indeed found evidence of very high annual rainfall during the catastrophic volcanism that formed the Deccan Traps in India about 66 million years back. So the technique that was used was the nanoscale secondary ion mass spectrometry to analyze three isotopes of oxygen in the fossil trees of the Cretaceous period and measure the isotopic composition of lake water derived from the rainfall. So there was the technique, we're not going into much technicalities of it. Coming to the FAQ page, so why is China limiting exports of the raw materials? So given this geopolitical situation also, the countries are basically trying to diversify their trade partners and they are also trying to diversify their global supply chains. So since China, it enjoys hegemony in number of things like semiconductors also, and obviously this was a realization during the COVID-19 period. So that is one area. So here we're just trying to understand why China is actually limiting the exports of raw materials. So which are the industries which would be impacted because of this decision if the supply of gallium and germanium that is controlled by China, and what are the particularities of the restrictions that are being imposed, and is it a response to the Western sanctions? And obviously, if it is a response to that, then it would be having much more wider impact on other countries also. Then obviously, the next question is that how this will affect India. So on 3rd July, in what is being seen as the country's retaliatory move in the chip war, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce, they have announced that it would implement export controls on items that are related to gallium and germanium. So basically, these two elements are the raw materials for making semiconductor chips. So it said that these controls, they were being imposed in order to safeguard national security interests of China. So that's the basic reason that is often cited. And with this decision, obviously, it would lead to spiking up of the prices of these raw materials, and companies, they would be rushing in to secure their supplies. So what are the curbs announced? We're not going into that. We just need to know the basic thing that these two raw materials, they are being restricted by China. So why is it a matter of concern? So gallium, it is used to make gallium arsenide, which forms the core substrate of the semiconductors. So they are used to manufacture semiconductor wafers, which is utilized in the integrated circuits in mobile phones and satellite communication, in LEDs, in the displays. So it is also used in automotives, lighting, and for the sensors in the avionic and then space and defense systems as well. So their application is very critical, and that is obviously in the strategic areas of national security. So that's why it is becoming a matter of concern that what is going to happen if its supply gets disrupted or it gets reduced. So according to a European industry body, 80% of the gallium production takes place in China. So China controls 80% of the gallium world supply. So that is something which is naturally endowed in China. But again, China is basically trying to misuse its power at this front. Apart from this, China, it also commands 60% of the total production of germanium. So that remains huge. Like if it is having more than 50%, that in itself is a very huge number. So element is used fiber optic cables, infrared imaging devices, optical devices. So they're also used in the solar cells for their ability to withstand the heat and higher energy conversion efficiency. So European Commission's import dependence on China stands at 71% and 45% for gallium and germanium respectively. So they have also recognized it as a critical raw material. And in India also, Ministry of Mines have identified the two elements to be crucial for the country's economic development and for national security. So that's why they become critical raw materials. So what is the response of different countries? So US, it firmly opposes the export controls and would consult its partners and allies to address this issue. And apart from this, it will also engage with the allies and partners to address this and to build resilience in the critical supply chains. And the same goes for the European Commission also. So what is the geopolitical backdrop? So in October last year, the US Department of Commerce, it had implemented a series of export control measures to protect its national security and foreign policy interests. So likewise, the same reason has been cited by China this time. So China, it has also used the same reasoning and directed primarily at the semiconductor manufacturing items. US measures, they were announced to restrict China's ability to obtain the advanced computing chips, develop and maintain the supercomputers, and manufacture the advanced semiconductors. So it is also being said that China is using them to manufacture advanced military systems. So that also includes weapons of mass destruction. It is working upon improving the speed and accuracy of its military decision-making, planning, and logistics alongside committing human rights abuses as well. Then Netherlands is also like it's home to the world's most important chip making equipment manufacturer, which is ASML, and also held that these measures they was necessary on the national security grounds. Then China's response to this, and what is important for us the most right now is its impact on India. So according to an associate fellow at the Observer Research Foundation, Chinese export controls, they're expected to have short-term impact on India and its industries due to disruption in the immediate supply chains. So in the short term, definitely it will be impacting India. And he states that increased prices resulting from the export control, it would also affect the cost and the availability of chips. So that would be also leading to increase in the import prices, and obviously it would be impacting India's chip making plans. So in the long term, consequences for India's chip making plants and industries will depend on several factors. So that includes alternative supply sources, then domestic semiconductor production capabilities that we have, and the strategic partnerships like the recently announced India-US initiative on critical and emerging technology. So these factors are going to be crucial in ensuring a reliable, stable, smooth supply chain for India's semiconductor industry. So why are India-Russia trade payments in crisis? Although we have discussed this thing in detail, like when we talk about internationalization of rupee or when we talk about de-dollarization, this topic becomes important. We have also like spoken about how does the Vostro account, how does they function, and even the concerns were also discussed that why now basically Russia is not ready to accept Indian rupee in the form of payments for the exchange of goods. So what is the current size of India's imports from Russia? We'll understand this thing. Why is there an issue of what currency to be used for the payments? So this has become an infusion, a point of confusion. Why did the rupee ruble mechanism, it did not work out? What other currencies is India exploring for the payments? Because then we are trying to reduce our dependence on US dollar, that is moving towards de-dollarization. So that would be also, somewhere impacting the exchange rate volatility also. So as India, it continues to import the oil from Russia, it is getting tougher for the country to pay for it. So on the one hand, it faces repercussions of breaching the oil cap of $60 a barrel, which is put by the US and European nations on Russia. So this is one thing that India needs to ensure. And on the other side, using currencies like Chinese yuan for payments, which India has already started doing, has its own geopolitical ramifications and amid the strained ties with Beijing. So you already know that the share of the Russian crude oil, it has massively increased. So that is one of the positive impacts of this Russia-Ukraine war for India. Apart from this, the prices were also discounted. So that's another thing. We were able to save massive amount of forex reserves because of the discounted prices of crude oil. So which currency is being used for the payments? So for starters, as part of the war-induced sanctions on Moscow, so the US and European Union, the UK, they have blocked multiple Russian banks from accessing the Society for Worldwide Interbank Financial Telecommunication, which basically it's a global secure interbank system. So obviously now the payment cannot be done in the US dollar because of this sanctions or the limitations that have been put on Russia by the Western world. So a global secure interbank system, that is SWIFT, and an estimated $500 million. It is pending for the goods that are already shipped by Indian exporters to Russia. It is now not possible to get the payments through the SWIFT channel. So this amount remains outstanding. So in an effort to economically strain Russia, the West targeted one of the biggest trade goods, that was energy, for which transactions have traditionally been the dollar dependent. So in this case, we are not seeing that the sanctions were successful in having those desired or the expected results or the outcome on Russia. But in at the same time, there's some problem in case of doing the payments. So besides an oil ban jointly, which was agreed between multiple countries, it was also decided to put a price cap on the Russian oil. And India, it is not a formal signatory to these sanctions, but it has tacitly agreed to maintain this price cap as much as it's possible. So until recently, the blends of the oil India was importing from Russia, they were largely below the price cap fixed by G7 countries, and India was able to pay for the oil using the dollars. So, however, Russia it has lowered its discounts due to high demand from China and also lower grade oil. It is now in short supply. So, going forward, these are some newly emerging challenges. So, right now we were basically trying to do payments through the rupee ruble mechanism. So notably, India was in negotiations with Russia to the Russia to reactive the basically the rupee ruble trade agreement, which is an alternative payment mechanism to settle their dues in rupees instead of the dollars or the euros. So if you go by the reports, they showed that in the month of May, this payment mechanism it could not take off, and there are a couple of reasons for this why it couldn't take off. That is, there is skepticism on the rupee ruble convertibility, as the ruble's value is kept by the capital controls and not determined by the market. And in case of reserved currencies also. So on the flip side, Russia it is also pointed out that it finds the rupee to be volatile. So these are some of the concerns shared by Russia. And lastly, more significantly, the unforeseen surge in the oil trade between India and Russia. In 1 year alone, it has led to a massively ballooning of the trade deficit also. So the India's trade deficit touched $43 billion with Russia, and because that is the imported goods worth $50 billion while its exports were at $3 billion. So this led to staggering amounts of Indian rupees in the Russian banks that cannot be used by Russia in its war efforts. So that is another concern. So is de-dollarization being attempted? So since the dollar it is largely considered global reserve currency, many countries they have seen US sanctions as a way for America to weaponize the dollar. So with this, countries are looking for alternatives. And India too recently it has released a roadmap for internationalization of the Indian rupee, and so as to create more broader acceptance of it. So what is the next thing? So experts have pointed out that while India it could use the yuan for payments, there are concerns about how that would appear geopolitically as it continues to have strained ties with Beijing because of the border standoff. So another solution could be to counter the deficit with Russia by getting it to make investments in the energy projects in India and to invest in the government bonds also. So the Protection of Plant Varieties and Farmers' Rights Authority, this is an important body. So here the issue is that the Indian court turns down PepsiCo's appeal against the revocation of FC5 potato patent. So Delhi High Court dismisses their appeal against the order of this authority, revoking the intellectual protection which was granted to the company's FC5 potato variety. So it had ruled that India's rules do not allow a patent on seed varieties. So this is an extremely important area. So please read this article, and you can also do an online search for this topic in order to have more clarity. So you need to keep in mind that India do not allow a patent on seed varieties. Then again, at the same time, we are talking about de-dollarization. So India and Tanzania, they also begin trade settlements in the local currencies. So railways, it is going to launch special trains connecting the heritage sites. So this is important from the perspective of culture. So you need to know about the different heritage sites, which would be a part of this initiative. So the union ministry stresses on reduction in the chemical fertilizers. So what are the alternatives? Using the manure, that is the best thing. And the side effects of overconsumption of chemical fertilizers, they are visible now. Soil health, it has been impacted because of overuse of the chemical fertilizers. So here, even in terms of the fertilizer subsidy, what changes government can do, that can also help here. So that's the important thing. So waking up to the sleep economy. So this is basically this thing, or this sector has also become much more commercialized. So with a rise in the sleeping difficulties and disorders, several businesses, they have stepped in to address this issue, creating a market that is all set to grow to $585 billion by 2024. So how much sleep do you need? So while the recommended amount of sleep, it varies during, obviously varies depending upon your age, your lifestyle and individual needs, but most adults, they require about 7 to 9 hours of sleep per night to function optimally. And there are some people who can function well with less sleep, and that is generally considered to be normal as long as they do not experience excessive daytime sleepiness, fatigue, or other negative consequences. Then it can be also because of the genetics. And the people, they are often referred to as the short sleepers. They typically require only 4 to 6 hours of sleep per night. But again, that's a rare thing. So here you are having different products in terms of gummies or different apps to monitor your sleep, all of that. So what are the reasons for sleepless nights? So that's obviously addiction to the technology we've been using, like either mobile phones, or we are sitting on our laptops watching movies during late night. And modern work life, it leaves many feeling like anxious, they feel stressed and burnout. Then poor dietary habits, that's another concern. High intake of caffeine, sugar, and processed food, it can interfere with sleep. Then lack of exercise. So a sedentary lifestyle too contributes to poor sleep, and environmental factors. So not only your lifestyle, but environmental factors like air and noise pollution, along with excessive lighting, it can be disruptive for your sleep. So sound check, noise pollution is an underestimated threat that can cause a number of health problems. And it's time to recognize its inherent dangers. So here we are having different limits. So sound that is defined as noise pollution is more than 65 decibels. And guideline recommendation for the noise in the bedrooms during the night for a sleep of good quality should be less than 30 decibels. And when the noise it crosses, it breaches the 75 decibel limit, it becomes harmful. And when noise becomes painful, it is when it is above 120 decibels. So when we talk about the Uniform Civil Code, we are talking about reforming the personal laws and not bringing something which would be uniformly applicable across the country. So words, they have meaning. So when talking about Article 44, it says that state shall endeavor to secure for citizens a uniform civil code throughout the territory of India. So the reforms, they started in 1955. So as the personal laws they stand today, there is gender discrimination as well as non-gender based discrimination, some unscientific and unhealthy practices, as well as reprehensible practices and customs. So these aspects of personal laws, they need to be reformed. And reform of the personal laws, it's not new. It has been on the national agenda since making of the constitution. And that was also one of the top concerns of the Parliament of India, even in 1952. So among the champions of the reform were Jawaharlal Nehru and Baba Sahib Ambedkar. So back then, four major laws they were passed, amending and codifying the Hindu law, braving the opposition of the orthodox and conservative sections of the people. So that includes the Hindu Marriage Act, Hindu Succession Act, Hindu Minority and Guardianship Act, and the Hindu Adoptions and Maintenance Act. So these are some of the amendments done back then. Here, heed the 21st Law Commission and the recommendations. So that becomes important for us for more clarity on this thing. So we paused when we faced the personal laws of the tribal people. So none of the four acts, they apply to the scheduled tribes which are notified under Article 366. And sixth schedule of the constitution was added for the administration of tribal areas in Assam, Meghalaya, Tripura, and Mizoram. And it also included a paragraph conferring powers on the district councils and the regional councils in those states to make laws with respect to inheritance, marriage and divorce, and social customs. So special provisions they were introduced in order to preserve their traditions and the customs. Coming to Indian Express newspaper, so let's see. So according to a Supreme Court judge, we need safe space for women in sports, and redressal system must be there, needs to function effectively. So amid the ongoing case over the complaints of the sexual harassment that has been filed by some wrestlers against Brij Bhushan Sharan Singh, uh, the Supreme Court Judge Justice Hema Kohli has underlined the need to put in place a robust mechanism to report gender-based misconduct and time-bound redressal of such complaints. So how this would be ensured is the important thing. So women empowerment through sports, and it should also include setting up of helplines, establishing independent statutory committees to probe the complaints and imposing strict penalties on offenders. So we are able to create a safe and inclusive environment. It will send a powerful message to the entire society that women in sports, they deserve respect, dignity, and protection from all forms of discrimination and harassment. So Russia-Ukraine war completes 500 days, and Zelensky hails his soldiers from the Black Sea island. So island assumes significance for the Ukraine's fight against Russia. So this is also a newly emerging topic, that why does TRI it wants to regulate WhatsApp and similar OTT services. So we also discussed this thing yesterday, but let's do it in a much more structured manner. So here is this a U-turn by TRI or not? So in September 2020, TRI it recommended regulatory interventions for these OTT platforms, saying it should be left to the market forces. And it also noted that the sector should be monitored and intervention should be done at an appropriate time. So in 2022, it wrote back to the authority requesting it to reconsider its recommendation and suggest a suitable regulatory mechanism for selective banning of OTT services. So why a regulation for these OTT communication services is needed? So TRI, it has essentially argued that while these telecom operators and the OTT services like WhatsApp, they offer similar services, so they are not bound by the same requirements. As a result, there is a need for the regulatory parity. So it said that telecom operators, they need a service license for offering voice and SMS services. So on the other hand, these OTT communication service providers, they offer voice call and messaging and video call services similar to the services that is provided by TSPs without any such license requirement. So the regulation needs to be a uniform, and basically the explorations, they continue. So government brings in the GST tax network under the PMLA ambit. So in the 2-month-long drive against the fake registrations of GST, over 69,000 suspected GSTINs, they were identified for physical verification by the field tax officials. So this has been brought under the Money Laundering Act. A notification by Finance Ministry is amended an earlier 2006 notification that will facilitate sharing of the information between GST and Enforcement Directorate and other investigative agencies. So that's all for today. And thank you so much for joining us in the today's analysis session. I hope things are much more clearer now. And do subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And also hit the like button for the video.